What is up, guys? Wraec is here with a new video, and today I want to talk a little bit about Prism Starry Gems and the credit rating, which is a new feature the Age put into the game last week. And if you've never heard of it, let me explain to you what this is. Basically, the Age decided that we can no longer buy Starry Gems in the shop. Instead, we buy Prism Starry Gems. As you can see here, that was usually the page where you bought Starry Gems, and now there are those Prism Starry Gems. Same amount, same price, didn't change anything. And those Prism Starry Gems can be converted to real Starry Gems, which is a menu that you can find here. If you press the plus, there is like Prism Starry Gems, and you can convert them to real Starry Gems. And as you can see, there is an exchange permit left here, 10,124. And this refers to my credit rating. My credit rating is credit rating level 17. And I can daily exchange 10,128 Prism Starry Gems into Starry Gems. That is what my credit rating allows me. If you have a higher credit rating, you can exchange more. And if you have a lower credit rating, then you might be able to exchange less, or you will most certainly be able to exchange less. So, that is basically the new system. And it has actually sparked small outrage, not even that big of an outrage, to be honest, but people were certainly discussing it, and there are still a lot of negative opinions on it, so I thought I would address that and talk a little bit and tell you guys my opinion about it. Basically, for the structure of this video, let's first start with one point I want to criticize about the implementation of Starry Gems, and then we will go into what the Age's idea was with implementing it, and what I give you some details for the backstory, and then we talk about if I think that it's a good system that should stay in the game, or if the Age has to rework that or should rework that. So, first of all, one major flaw with the implementation that I found is really also something from the FAQ. Maybe I can read a little bit from the FAQ for that. What they basically say is it's about the use of Starry Gems. So, Starry Gems can be used to exchange for Starry Gems, or Prism Starry Gems can be used to exchange for Starry Gems in the auction house. We saw that. And then they wrote also Prism Starry Gems can be used in Awaken Heroes solo purchase packages. And, well, really doesn't say that in game. That is so stupid, but it says a Starry Gem that is polished into this unique shape can be used to exchange for Starry Gems. It just doesn't say here that you can use those to awaken heroes, or that you can use those to buy packs. And I think that's very stupid, because they try to sell that here, and they just have an incomplete description for it, and players don't know, and they can't be sure of it. They can't be sure that this can be used to buy packs if it doesn't say that in game. So the Age really has to update this description if they want to keep those Starry Gems here. I tried summoning with them. Definitely works. Definitely works. I didn't buy a pack with it yet, but they seem to have the same functionality as contract Starry Gems, and on top of that can also be converted to real Starry Gems. Contract Starry Gems, of course, still can't be converted to Starry Gems. So that is the major difference between Prism Starry Gems and contract Starry Gems. I, by the way, had some pretty good summons with Prism Starry Gems. Don't want to spark a rumor here, but maybe they gave them some extra functionality. We won't know. And hard to figure out, by the way. But if there's something in the future somebody finds out that they are indeed better for summoning, you heard it first here. So, why are they in the game now? And with that, we are at the FAQ. They posted a FAQ on Facebook, and I will put that, copy that and put that in a pinned comment down below so you can read it for yourself. They answered some questions there, and I have to say I'm happy if they answer questions. They always say that those are questions from the community, and might be true in this case, but more often than not, they seem to kind of invent questions and then that are convenient for them, and then say they answered it and tell that this is something that was written by the community. It is a little bit weird, because there were certainly enough questions by the community, and yeah. I think they should just add the username to it. That would have been nice. Just add the username to the question, the username of the person who wrote it, and that would have really give it credibility, to be honest. Well, just an idea. So, the main part I want to focus on here is not the ways they wrote about credit, how to improve credit rating and daily exchange quota. We've talked about this for a second. It's basically the same I said before. A little bit extra is keeping great game behavior. And then they basically say what they wrote in game. Avoid violations as disrupting such market transactions, third-party recharge, and malicious refunds, which are terms we will find again later. And they really don't define what they mean with that. And most of it is pretty badly translated to English, which is horrible for a company like this. They make millions and still aren't able to find somebody that can speak semi-decent English. So I have no idea. This is really horrible. But the main part I want to focus on now are why does the credit rating feature launched? Quote, by the way. The next thing will also be quote. I will just read it from the FAQ. Creating a fair trading environment is what we've been working towards, but third-party recharge, malicious refunds is constantly destroying the transaction balance and game experience, which is very unfair to almost players. Prism Starry Gems cannot be traded directly, and the time cost required for conversion will limit related violations. So, let's pick a few of those things and talk about it. So let's first talk about third-party recharge. What do they mean by third-party recharge? Well, the third party in that sense are other players. Other players that are in the game, and more often than enough, it's like a free-to-play player that goes into the Soul Temple, gets their free summon, puts a hero in here. Do we have a free summon? No, we don't. And just happens to summon an SS hero, for example. And they sell that on the auction house, and suddenly have 120,000 starry, for example. And if you are a free-to-play player, you now have two routes that you can go. Either you go into the auction house and then you buy yourself a Mockman, you buy yourself an SFX at A tier and you smash the entire game, which is one option that you have and that can be quite fun. Suddenly having a good account and not even really spending for it can be really fun. The other option that you have is selling that starry, because you can certainly go to another player and say, hey, look, I have starry gems here, I don't want to use them, do you want to buy them? I will sell them to you for X amount of money and I will give them to you and you send me some money via PayPal or bank transaction or whatever. And that is certainly one way to do it, and that happened a lot, of course, because there are a lot of players who say, I don't want to keep that amount of money in the game. In some parts of the world, it can be quite insane to get like an SS tier summon and get like 5,000 bucks or something transferred to you that are multiple months worth of your loan or something. Can be insane. Can be absolutely insane. So basically they sold their starry, and the starry was usually sold for like 60 to 70 euro per 2,500 starry gems received by the player that buys it. And of course this makes sense because you have to give a person that buys your starry some incentive to buy it. Because if they just bought it for the 115 euro that it's in here per 2,500, yeah, why would they buy it from another player? Go into the risk of getting scammed. Deal with the person. Deal with the insecurity that you have dealing with somebody that you have never made a trade with before. When you can just go in here, click the button, buy 2,500 starry gems, and you will guarantee to receive it. So there has to be some financial aspect to it, some financial advantage in going to another player, and this was basically with a way lower price achieved. So, this was the one way starry was dealt, and I'm pretty happy that this exists, because I can fully understand the people that say, I don't want to have that much money in my account. I want to play this game free to play, do my arena, do my Void Vortex, prepare for a few months maybe before I clear Void Vortex. I don't want to have an SS hero, I don't want to have an A hero, I don't need that. I would rather have the money. And those people, I absolutely feel like it should be okay for them to trade. In the end, you should never forget that this starry was usually bought by somebody. Like, apart from the next thing I'm going to tell you, starry is usually bought. There usually should be no starry in the system that nobody spent money for. Because at one point somebody went in there and said like, okay, I will buy this 2,500 starry pack and I will buy a hero with it or something. And this starry is transferred in the system and the age takes their 5% cut, by the way, which is a lot of starry and a lot of money every day from just the transactions, because they take 5% of what every single hero is sold for. That is quite a lot, actually. Well, they obviously have the money in advance, but that is another story. So, I already hinted that there is some starry in the system that nobody paid for. And this basically happens in a way that there are players that create new accounts and they level to a certain extent until they unlock the auction house. And with the auction house, they unlock two options to transfer starry. The first option is starry gem gifting, where you can just gift starry to any given player, and as long as you have a senior privilege card. And the other one is buying a copy on the auction house. You can just buy, for example, the Smogman, and you will transfer 222 starry to the player that's selling it. And for some copies, there is no limit in the value of a copy, and you can just send them 200,000 starry for the C tier version, usually of a new hero. That was like, usually you could go into the auction house, and if there was a new hero, it had no limit of what price you can write on it. Right now, that is no longer the case. Do we have a copy? Yeah, we have this copy, for example. I told that in the video before, and now those copies all have max prices. So if I wanted to now send 999,000 starry for it, I couldn't. It would be set down. The same for buyout. That's a B- copy, and all B- copies now have a set limit. The set limit for B- is 1,440. Oh, no, for this is even lower. That's insane. They lowered those values? I didn't know that. B- was usually far more expensive. It was 1,440. Now it's 774? You can see that's not the case for all copies. That is interesting. That is certainly interesting. That this is below the usual price. Usually they made, with one of the recent updates, they made it the same for all B- copies, for all C- copies, for all copies like this. But this one is even cheaper. I have to look into that. This will be a separate video. Just found a new video topic while making this. This is insane. And basically now they have limits for all heroes. All heroes aside from A- and higher. You can see this Mogman here. I priced that in a little bit high, but Mogmans are expensive. I want to sell mine. So this is one thing. And now those people, they buy a bunch of starry basically and fill that on the account, max their credit card. It doesn't matter, as much starry as they can. And then they transfer it in one way or the other. I think mostly through hero copies, maybe through a lot of gifting as well. I'm not quite sure. I didn't have the chance to interview somebody doing this. I know they exist, but I couldn't get one and ask him my question, sadly. And then after this was transferred, they refund the starry on the account that just bought it, on this level 100 or whatever account. They just refund it via Google, get all of their money back, and refund all of those starry buys. And what usually happens if you go to the shop, by the way, and you buy a shoe and then you want to refund that shoe, you give the shoe back to the shop, you get your money back, all good. In that case, the starry is gone, and Google says, okay, this was refunded, the age, you have to take the starry back. And there are basically two parties involved here. Google gives you back your money, and just doesn't transfer the money that you paid Google initially to the age and gives them instantly back. And then they tell the age, yeah, you have to get those in-game buys that the person got, you have to refund those, or you have to get those back. And what the age would usually have to do would be to get those buys back from the account. But it's no longer on the account. And it was distributed in some way to another account, and the age could now go ahead and reverse that trade, but apparently they have decided against that, because I had a debate with Aika about that. She said, yeah, but what if the trade was legitimate? Yeah, but you can just give the hero copy that was bought back to the person and take the starry back. That would have been one way. And apparently they didn't do that. They said like, okay, the starry's gone, nothing to do. They gave the account negative starry, and if you wanted to have the account back, then you could buy enough starry and basically until your saldo is 0 again for a negative starry. Obviously, those accounts were just meant to be trashed afterwards, because they were just leveled to level 100 until they could get to the auction house, until they could buy starry, and then they were thrown in trash. And obviously those negative saldos were never balanced again. So now the age suddenly had 200,000 starry or something in the system that nobody paid for. And This is really what drove up prices in the auction house, by the way. There was a lot of inflation because of this, because suddenly you had a bunch of Starry, and this was really when copies started to explode. I mean, like the Mockman I'm selling, this was a usual price for A Mockmans now. I remember the days when the auction house was first released and people looked at it and there were suddenly hero copies for 20,000 Starry in there, and people said, buying it for 20,000 Starry, insane. And that was a high price, and I think the first S tiers or first A plus or something like this, they were sold for like 40k, and then it really started to escalate. And now, like even an A minus Mockman copy, the worst A minus Mockman is worth 50, 60k, which is absolutely insane. And I think those people that with those refund Starry, they really drove up those prices because they infused a lot of Starry into the economy. And that is really, of course, that harms normal players. No questions asked. Because that really harms normal players. Because if you now go into the auction house and you want to buy a Mockman, you can spend 60k or something on it. Well, without the people, you might have just spent 30 or something. So maybe this has increased the prices. We, of course, can't really see by how much it influenced it, but I'm pretty sure it did. And obviously those people now had 200,000 Starry and they sold it to another player. And the main problem DH now has with that Starry is the other person that buys the Starry for usually the same amounts as the Starry that was acquired by selling hero copies. The other person now goes ahead and buys a pack and deletes this Starry again from the economy. And usually when a person buys a pack, DH got money for the Starry. Or gets money for the pack. Whatever. One of the two. But in this situation, DH didn't receive any money and the person bought a pack. So it's not really the player to be judged here that bought the Starry from another person and bought a pack with it. But usually DH would have received money from that person. And they see that, obviously. And obviously there are people that whaled a lot in the past. And now they just buy Starry to buy packs. And DH doesn't receive any money. In that sense, by the way, no purchasing still does exist, which is quite funny in the sense that people are whaling without giving DH money. And this is obviously bad for DH. And now they try to get back to that point because they see that there are players that are usually whales and they give them $0. They just don't get the money anymore. And this is really infuriating. I can understand that for them. Definitely is the case. And they now brought this system into place to deal with those refund people, to deal with those people that do the refunds, because now when you go onto an account and you have a level 100 account or something and you don't have heroes, you didn't buy anything, then you have a trash credit rating. And with a trash credit rating, those guys would have Prism Starry Gems. Now, they have Prism Starry Gems and they can't convert it. Even if they try to convert it, you heard that time was relevant. That was the last thing I said. Prism Starry Gems cannot be traded directly, and the time cost required for conversion will limit related violations. And the reason that the time cost limits those violations is you can't indefinitely refund stuff via Google. At some point you have to go to DH and say, DH, I want to refund that. And that is another story. Of course, then they have other options. They can't deal with Google. Google just says, okay, we refund. Done. And DH has no say in that. And this only works for a certain amount of time. I'm not sure how long. It's not that long, really. Depends on your country also. And DH really wants to get those refund trades out of that time frame that you can refund it via Google. So they gave those low accounts really low credit ratings and said, okay, now they can't do it anymore. So it works. It really does. It really does work. It really limits the amount of Starry people can refund. And it basically took all sense out of this action. So in that sense, this really worked. There will be no more refund Starry. That just doesn't make sense anymore. There were some negative side effects to this. And the first negative side effect I also described right now. I said, like, if you have a new account and you don't really have a whole lot, and then you have a low credit rating. So now let's just imagine a scenario. the scenario is little Timmy is now going into the game, and little Timmy is playing the game for a few months now. And now little Timmy went into the void and got his first Transcendence Hero, and his first Transcendence Hero is an SFX. And now little Timmy has this SFX, and for Christmas he got a bunch of money or something. Well, let's say little Timmy is 25. Not that little Timmy. And he has some money, and he says like, okay, I want to spend that money on the game I just started playing. The game is a lot of fun. I got SFX, which is a very cool hero. And I say like, I want to go into the auction house and I want to buy myself a very cool SFX copy. Let's look for that in the meantime. Very cool SFX copy. Let's buy one with a big attack stat. Timmy wants one with a big attack stat. And he's not a big whale. Timmy's not a big whale. He can't go for those A tiers. But let's just say he found one that is not that expensive. Let's say this one. This one, for example. Timmy found that one. Damage reduction, holy damage, 4,800 attack, currently at 810 bidding. Let's say this one sells for 1,000 Starry Gems. Let's say this sells for 1,000 Starry Gems. And Timmy expects this one to sell for 1,000 Starry Gems. So Timmy goes ahead and Timmy checks out the Prism Starry Gems. And he sees, okay, 1,240. Let's buy this and let's convert 1,240 Starry Gems into real Prism Starry Gems into real Starry Gems. So what Timmy is now forced to do is check his credit rating, and what Timmy will see there is a credit rating somewhere between 1 and 5 usually, depending on his progress. And if he's in the very low state and just unlocked Auction House, it will likely be at 1 or 2, very low. And this might mean that Timmy can convert as low as 4, yes you heard right, 4 Starry Gems a day. 4 Starry Gems a day means little Timmy is now stuck converting for the next 250 days. 250 days. At which point this SFX will no longer be in the auction house, obviously. And little Timmy will have likely lost all interest in the game. So as Timmy is smart, he sees that and says like, nah, okay, I will spend that money on beer and get very drunk, which is also a great use of $50. You can do that. So no money for the age at that point. So this is the one group that they scare off, like young whales. And the other group that gets a problem doing this is older whales, like me. Because what happens when I go into the auction house and I want to do some unhealthy spending, for example for a V-Gurky, but let's say I want to buy, I feel in a particularly spending mood and I want to buy something stronger, something cooler. Let's buy something cool. Let's say I want to buy an S model. I want to buy an S model. S model is a pretty cool hero. This one is Giant Killer, it's even cooler. And I need 60k Starry Gems to buy that S model. So how do I acquire 60k Starry Gems? I currently have 34. So let's calculate that. Let's say this one goes for bidding 59,000. Let's say that. So let's check. It has 4 more hours here. I then have 2 resets in between, so I can get Starry 3 times and max my cap 3 times now. So how much Starry will I have? I have 34 Starry, 10,128 per day, so I will have like 30,000 Starry. And now I sit here and think like, oh, doesn't really work. So I can't buy this S model by buying Starry in-game. It's not possible. The only way I could do that if I now started converting Starry and would save up some Starry on this account over multiple days and then wait for something I could buy. But I could not see something in the auction house and buy it. This is not possible. The only way that would be possible if I went to other players. So third-party recharge. Third-party recharge would make it possible for me to even get this S model, because I could go into some other discords, write some people and tell them, yeah, I need 60,000 Starry Gems in the next 2 hours. And they would write me, yeah, I have like two offers, you can get it, it's no problem. And I would have somebody gift me Starry Gems in the next 2 hours. Would be no problem. I would pay less than in-game, obviously, and I would have my Starry Gems. And I would have no way to actually do that in-game. Which is so beyond stupid. You have players like Artorias that buy SSS heroes, that buy heroes like this 300,000 starry gems, spend 300,000 starry gems on the game, and they can't do that. They can't do that. And I don't understand why the H didn't think about that. Do you think that an Artorias or a Jesus or even me is going to do a refund scam on an account like this? That I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, I have an SS SFX, I have a bunch of A tiers on this account, let me just go ahead and refund 10,000 starries so Idle Heroes bans my account. Yeah, sure, definitely. So it doesn't even make sense for that group. And on the other hand, it does not even make sense for the group we just talked about. Credit ratings like this level 1 credit rating make no sense. Because when do refund scams happen? I said it to you, they max their credit card and then they refund. And it does not help them. It does not help at all to disable it for this feature for most players, to take most players out of the auction house, to disable them from buying small copies, to disable them from buying C tiers, B tiers, something like this. No, there is no use in a credit exchange cap of 4. Those refunds are dealt with at 50,000 starry. If it's below 50,000 starry, it won't even make sense for them. Maybe 20,000. Let's say 20,000. But everything below 20,000 is useless. So you just have to say you can't do refund scams for more than 10,000, and then you have most players excluded, and just limit it. Maybe don't limit it per day. Limit it for like 2 weeks or something. And then say 2 weeks it's 10,000 or something like this. And then you make it 2 or 3 classes, and one class can get to 10,000, the other to 20, maybe to 30. And then you can still have people buy a big amount in a small amount of time and convert it, get their copy from the auction house. And you don't limit players that just made an account that much. Because it doesn't even help combat them. We see that this system can work to combat refund scams, but it is too harsh. It is too harsh at this point. It limits normal players to an extent that is not okay. Well, so it needs to be higher. Those credit ratings like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or something like this, those need to be scrapped. Even my Amazon account, by the way, has a credit rating where we can convert 90 starry gems. I can convert 90 starry gems on my Amazon account with 2 A+ heroes and everything. That's ridiculous. So, that was basically all I wanted to say about it. It was kind of a big video now. I hope you liked it. Maybe tell me if you listened to the end. I know a lot of people do usually videos above 20 minutes do a little worse, but were a lot of things I wanted to say. In any way, I wish you guys a great day, and we will see us in the next one.